Welcome back to Firepower. This isn't just a range review, it's a deep dive into one of America's most misunderstood rifles, a gun that's been loved, hated, banned, and reborn more times than any other. For 50 years, the Ruger Mini 14 has walked a strange path, part hunting rifle, part tactical icon, and part survivor of America's never-ending gun debate. Some call it outdated, some call it overrated. But the truth is, the Mini 14 was never meant to fit in. It was built to outlast. Today, we're going to expose the hidden story, the engineering secrets, the political scars, and the cultural impact that made the Mini 14 a legend no one saw coming. So strap in, because this isn't just about ballistics, it's about survival, mechanical, historical, and political. The year was 1973. The Vietnam War was over, and America was tired of military rifles. The M16 had become a symbol of mistrust, black plastic, military aggression, and government control. The country wanted something familiar again. Enter Bill Ruger, a designer with a gift for turning controversy into opportunity. He looked at the M14, the rifle that came before the M16, and thought, what if we made a smaller, friendlier version for the average American? That's how the Mini 14 was born. It carried the look and spirit of the M14, but it was lighter, shorter, and chambered in .223. The same round as the AR-15, but dressed in walnut and steel instead of black polymer. It didn't scream military. It whispered ranch rifle. And that whisper was powerful. To the public, it wasn't a weapon of war. It was a working tool. Ranchers kept it in their trucks. Lawmen carried it on patrol. Even suburban homeowners bought it because it looked respectable, not radical. The Mini 14 was the American compromise, powerful enough to protect, polite enough to pass. At first glance, the Mini 14 looks simple, but under the wood and steel lies an incredibly smart design. It borrows the short-stroke gas piston and rotating bolt from the M14, both proven systems, and compresses them into a smaller, faster action. The result is reliability. No carbon buildup like in direct impingement ARS. No complex takedown. Just a rifle that cycles, ejects, and keeps going. But that simplicity came at a cost. The original Mini 14's barrel was pencil thin. Great for weight savings. Terrible for sustained fire. Once it heated up, accuracy wandered like a drunk compass. At 50 yards, it was fine. At 100, it was unpredictable, and Ruger knew it. But here's the secret. That flaw wasn't just oversight, it was strategy. Bill Ruger didn't want his rifle to look like a precision sniper weapon. He wanted it to look and act like a practical tool for ordinary citizens. The Mini 14 wasn't built for soldiers, it was built for survivors. That design philosophy would later become its greatest weapon and its greatest shield. While the public bought the plain ranch rifles, Ruger was quietly building other versions they didn't advertise. One of the rarest was the Mini 14 chambered in .222 Remington, created just for countries where .223 was restricted by law. It was the same rifle, just slightly neutered to sneak past regulation. Then came the AC-556, the fully automatic Mini 14 variant built for police and military use. Selectable fire modes, folding stocks, flash hiders. The AC-556 was the Mini's wild cousin, capable of over 700 rounds per minute. Few civilians ever saw one, and fewer still legally owned one before the 1986 machine gun ban made them priceless collector's items. And then there was the Mini 30, chambered in 7.62 by 39, Ruger's shot across the bow of the AK-47 market. It promised the accuracy of an American rifle with the punch of a Soviet round. It didn't dominate, but it proved Ruger's willingness to experiment, adapt, and survive in a shifting gun landscape. Each version had a purpose, and each one told a different story about what Ruger was willing to risk to stay relevant. Then came the dark years, and they hit hard. In 1989, tragedy struck in Stockton, California, when a shooter used a Mini 14 to commit a horrific act of violence. The media seized on the story. Overnight, the Mini 14 became a symbol of everything wrong with guns in America. Bill Ruger, under massive pressure, made one of the most controversial statements in firearm history. He said, "No honest man needs more than 10 rounds in any gun." To gun owners, it was betrayal. To politicians, it was validation. Gun rights activists turned on Ruger overnight. Gun stores boycotted the brand. And for years, the Mini 14's name became synonymous with compromise. But Ruger didn't quit. They went quiet, rebuilt, redesigned, and prepared for a comeback no one expected. In the early 2000s, something changed. Without a single press release, Ruger started shipping new Mini 14s that were just better. The barrels were thicker, solving the old accuracy issues. The sights were improved, the machining was tighter, and suddenly, the Mini 14 could shoot honest 1-inch groups at 100 yards, something fans had begged for since the 70s. This new generation, known as the 580 series, marked the Mini's rebirth. Ruger didn't brag about it. They didn't rebrand it. They just fixed it. And that quiet humility earned them back something money couldn't buy: trust. Shooters began to realize that the Mini 14 wasn't an AR rival. It was a class of its own, a rifle with character, simplicity, and mechanical honesty. Fast forward to 2025. The gun market is flooded with AR-15s, polymer frames, folding stocks, red dots. Customization has become obsession, and yet the Mini 14 is still here. Why? Because it works. It doesn't need rails or lasers to prove its worth. It's legal in states where assault weapons are banned, because its wooden stock and classic design don't trip the radar of lawmakers. It's the rifle that slips through the cracks, not by accident, but by design. For preppers and survivalists, it's a dream: reliable, low maintenance, and perfectly capable of dropping a coyote or defending a homestead. For collectors, early models have become gold. The original 180 series rifles now fetching well over $1,500. Modern Mini 14s run around $900 to $1,200, depending on configuration. Expensive compared to entry-level ARS, but you're not buying modularity. You're buying independence. Here's the thing. The Mini 14 isn't just a firearm, it's a statement. It's the rifle for people who want capability without confrontation. For shooters who want something reliable, understated, and timeless. It's the quiet gun. Not screaming for attention, not begging for validation, just ready. Every scratch tells a story. Every click of the bolt feels mechanical, human, purposeful. There's no plastic buffer tube, no MLOK rails, no tactical theater. Just a rifle that does what it's supposed to do. Every single time. That's why the Mini 14 has outlived trends, bans, and the death of its own creator. It doesn't change for the market. The market bends back toward it. Let's be objective for a second. The Mini 14 isn't perfect. It's not as accurate as a modern AR. It's not as modular. And magazines are pricier and harder to find. But its advantages are real and important. First, reliability. The gas piston system keeps carbon out of the action. You can shoot hundreds of rounds without cleaning and it will still cycle. That's something even high-end ARs sometimes struggle with. Second, handling. At under 7 pounds, the Mini 14 shoulders quickly and points naturally. It feels like a hunting rifle, not a weapon. That matters when you're in the field or under pressure. Third, legality and image. In restrictive states where ARs are banned or heavily regulated, the Mini 14 stays legal. It's the loophole rifle, the last option for those who still want a semi-auto for defense or sport. So yes, it's less tactical, but that's exactly what keeps it alive. When you step back and look at American firearm history, every rifle tells a story. The AR-15 became the face of freedom and fear. The AK-47 became the face of rebellion. The M1 Garand was the rifle that won the war. The Mini 14? It became the rifle that refused to die. It never dominated the battlefield or revolutionized accuracy, but it endured. Through legislation, controversy, bans, and betrayal, it stayed in production, quietly evolving, quietly improving, and that's what makes it special. It's not a rifle born for war. It's a rifle built to outlast politics, panic, and even its own reputation. For some, it's nostalgia. For others, practicality. But for all who've used it, it's trust. So where does that leave us? If you want modularity, the AR-15 wins. If you want brute force, the M1A wins. But if you want simplicity, legality, and reliability in one timeless package, the Mini 14 still deserves its place on the shelf. Because while other rifles evolved to be loud, tactical, and intimidating, the Mini 14 stayed humble. And that humility became its armor. It's the rifle for those who care more about function than fashion. It's not trying to impress the internet. It's trying to survive the real world. In an age where guns are sold on hype and hashtags, the Mini 14 stands quietly in the corner, proven, patient, and unshakable. And that perhaps is the greatest victory any firearm can claim. The story of the Mini 14 isn't about innovation. It's about endurance. It reminds us that true value isn't always about the newest or the flashiest. It's about the machine that keeps working when everything else breaks down. The Mini 14 may not win every test on paper, but in the real world, in the dust, rain, and time, it wins where it matters: dependability. So next time someone calls it outdated, remember this. It's been on duty for 50 years. It's survived bans, boycotts, and the death of its own creator. And it's still here, firing, cycling, and proving that simplicity never goes out of style. This is firepower, where we don't follow hype, we follow truth. If you value performance over politics, subscribe now, because the next video might just change how you see the rifles in your safe. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and remember, legends don't fade, they reload.